We are now in our stop micromanaging and start delegating. So just to get ready with chat, we're going to open that in just a bit. I'll have some questions for you to start putting in the chat. Just want to say, one of the common things about delegation is that really it's the idea of entrusting power and authority to a person who's basically going to act as your representative. So that's the main idea of delegation. And just saying that might just cause already like, that's the hard part, is letting go. So for sure, because it is more than simply assigning work. It's the idea of also looking at delegation. It's not just giving trivial tasks, but giving people a chance to really build their talents, to help them grow. And also in the end, it's going to make a more collaborative atmosphere when people feel that they've taken some of your responsibilities and you've entrusted them with that. That's a great motivator. So as we are, one of the things of 2023, of course, trends is, keeping our staff motivated and engaged. And so this is such an important part to do that, is to delegate. So here we go with our first quiz. So right now, I'm gonna ask you to put in the chat, when you think of delegating, what is the first thought that comes to mind? So be ready to type in the chat A, B, C, D, or E. We've got a few choices here. As we said, delegation, it's a learning opportunity. B, this takes too much time. I don't want to seem bossy. You know what? I can do it better. That's basically what it boils down to, or other. So I look forward to seeing in the chat. Let's see what we've got here. So Joseph is saying I could do it better. Thank you for your honesty, Joseph. Sue Baker, you're saying too much time. Nancy, you got I don't want to seem bossy. Yeah, that's also Patricia. It's a learning opportunity. Nice. Sindhu, too much time. Caroline Aguilera, a lack of confidence on the other person. Yeah, that is such a good one. And we'll talk about that today. So that is some great examples. Thank you for clarifying what the E is, Carolina. I appreciate that. And Annette, you say I don't want to seem bossy, which is, absolutely, because you might want to give this delegation and you're just feeling like the people are saying, I've got so much to do. I have no time. I'm so busy. And so we're going to look at the motivations behind that and maybe why it might feel bossy and how we can make it feel less bossy, and really how it's, in a sense, delegation is really a gift to the other person and to your team in creating that. We got a few more coming in, and Jamie, you said a learning opportunity, and Olianka also as a learning opportunity. So thank you all for filling out the survey, and let's keep going here. So I also have a request. If you want to have pen and paper handy, you can also maybe have a Word document set up separately if you want. But we're just going to do an activity in just a short while where pen and paper might be handier to do, unless you're really adapted using your pencil or your iPad pencil, if that's the case. And then Chris, you just came in. This can't be late. It's needed to be handled right now. That's a great example too of why we don't delegate. And that comes into maybe I can do it better, because it's too much to explain. And there are times when you just need to get it done. And we'll look at that as we go through the process of delegation. All right, so here's the first two questions that might help your mindset in not seeming bossy, and looking at this as a learning opportunity as well. So 2 questions to ask yourself when you're going to be delegating. And number 1, as you're doing a task, is this the best use of my time? So as you're doing that task as part of a project, is this the best use of my time? And then the follow-up question to that, is this the best use of my talent? So even though this is a webinar, I'm just going to ask you to just take a couple seconds here and think about the past couple of weeks as you started 2023, and think about some projects that were you spending too much time being busy when you could have been more effective with that. So best use of your time. And was this a place where your talent was needed, or was this an opportunity maybe to explore someone else's talent that they were capable of doing this, and an opportunity maybe to help them grow? And even though that sounds like time consuming, I got to invest in time and training now. But if you can help grow those abilities now, it saves you a lot of time down the way. So let's take a look at the advantages of delegation. And I'm going to say one word here, and that's 10. It's actually a number. But I want to say about the idea of 10%. And it's like everything that we make as we start a new year or a new program, it feels overwhelming and we don't know where to start. So as you go in through this delegation webinar, I want you to think about what's 10% that I can start delegating? What's a 10% change that I can make? So it's not about completely overhauling everything that I'm doing, but really what's that 10% that I could do? And here's an example that with that 10% is that a recent study showed that business owners were able to grow their business by more than 20% if they only delegated 10% of their workload to someone else. So that's huge. So it's a high value activity, basically, that also keeps people engaged with that 10%. So just that 10% can create 20% growth. Let's look at some of the benefits and maybe why you don't do it. And maybe this might ring true with the quotes or the survey that you filled out just a couple of minutes ago. So some of the benefits, some of the advantages, obviously, is without a doubt, the main goal of delegating is to allow you as a manager, as a leader, to achieve more. What we always want to remember is that this is that opportunity to develop the skills of the team members, also to increase team involvement, because when people have a sense of purpose and a sense of responsibility, they're much more motivated and feel appreciated and valued. And so this could produce faster, more effective decisions, in the sense that often and working with so many leaders, what we've seen is when we talk about this, they often overlook certain people to give them certain responsibilities. So we're going to look at this a little bit later in the webinar about the importance of thinking about who you might not have thought of that could be a good candidate for this delegation, this responsibility, this growth opportunity. Now, while we don't do it, it could diminish your authority as a possibility. So they're like, well, why aren't you doing it? You're afraid of the risk involved. And that comes into also maybe there's just not enough time. I can do it better. Don't want to seem bossy, as we just said. Takes too much time. The employees don't have the experience, the skill level, and you do it better. So these are all a lot of stuff that you filled out in the survey. Absolutely. So why we want to delegate, these are the things that we want to be able to do and not to do, but things that we want to do is we want to really be clear about the results that are expected. You know, there's a quote there about, miscommunication, which is that, the other person, we assume the other person has understood everything, or that they have the ability to read our mind. And that's I love those quotes about miscommunication, that could they not read my mind, and specifying the results expected. And we'll show some examples of that in a bit. Explain why you're delegating and how this fits into their team, their department, how this fits into the organization, how this affects them, what's in it for them, and why this is important, but how this fits into the big purpose. And also giving the necessary authority. So, do they have all the passwords? Do they have the key, so to speak, to get in there? Letting others know of the delegation, which is also really important. So it's almost like a celebration that we're giving this responsibility to another person, and having the confidence in the employees. So someone said, earlier, and this happens all the time, is I don't feel confident to allow them. Well, you're in the position of leadership or manager. I'm assuming you're here at this webinar because you have very high expectations of yourself. And this is what we see when we work with a lot of leaders and managers, is that their own expectations of themselves are very high. And when you bring that to another person, those high level of expectations, that can really diminish the opportunity to look at it as a growth opportunity, that mistakes can happen. And how do we take those mistakes as learning opportunities? Delegating just not trivial tasks. So that doesn't feel, can you sign these documents? Can you make sure all these documents are signed? Very trivial tasks are not very empowering. Sometimes, for sure, it's got to be done, and that we do need to delegate that. But that's not delegating. That's just basically asking someone to do that. Expecting others to do the job as well as you can, which ties into those high expectations. We were working with some consultants in professional services, and I like what one of them said, which was the best way they were able to change their mindset around delegation was stop having the expectation that everything had to be perfect and it had to be great. I'm handing you this responsibility so that I want to, and I'm looking for good enough, to be honest. I'm looking for good enough. And I'm going to help you get you from good to great. And by saying it was good enough, obviously that person went above and beyond with that, because the pressure was taken off that it had to be perfect, that they were not afraid to make mistakes. When your focus is on the negative, I hope I don't, mess this up. I hope I don't make a mistake. Well, then that's probably what's going to happen. And you're only really getting a very limited amount of their abilities. So allowing them to know that good enough is where we're starting. That's our baseline. And we're gonna help you get from good to great is very encouraging and gives them a lot of freedom and creativity with that. That there's no flow to your delegation. So it's haphazardly. The micromanaging, you're continuously, constantly checking, and everyone has different definitions of that. But I'm going to talk about that because, a lot of times when we talk about delegation, a lot of leaders will say, well, when it comes to delegation, I want the people to know that my door is always open. So I'm going to come back to my door is always open as far as also checking constantly and then taking credit for the results. So even maybe you had a big part in training that person and helping them grow to do that task, and maybe you finished it off or for them. It's all about giving them the credit that they were invested in it, and this is an opportunity for growth. And that's what we want to do, is make this a motivational thing and not a delegating trivial tasks. Let's look at the characteristics of an effective delegator. So one is that receptiveness, which is obviously you are open to suggestions and willing to give the other people that chance to think creatively. So again, that, good enough to give them that ability to make mistakes and to do that. And that, which ties into our willingness to let go. It's hard to be able to give decision-making power to the team members. But if that trust is not there and the people can sense that, and if you're checking constantly or micromanaging, the title of our webinar, you're not going to get the results you want. You're going to get the results that you probably should have done it better, because that's what's going to happen. And again, it boils down to this willingness to let others make mistakes. So you have to be patient with them. Again, looking at this as a growth opportunity. They will be some mistakes. Mistakes are learning opportunities. One of the things that we have here is we have our podcast, the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast. And in that podcast, we have a segment that we like to call Failure, ta-da, where leaders will celebrate where they themselves had a failure moment in their journey. And when they share it, it's always going from ta-da to aha. So what was the learning opportunity that came out of that? And Mel just put in the link to the podcast. So that's our podcast on leadership and communication skills. And if you want to listen to leaders share their failure ta-da moments and some great tips also on delegation and feedback and difficult conversations, we've got lots of leaders sharing their expertise in there as well. The other things, characteristics of effective delegators is that, again, that trust of the team members. So it's, again, celebrating that as well. So letting other team members know that that's what's happening and we're celebrating that, and that creates trust within them. And then resisting the temptation to take the job to complete it personally. So it's really hard. That excellent communication techniques is pretty much where it starts. And we're going to do that in that process as we go through. So we got a question right here from Chris. If I delegate down to a report to be done, should I make sure that the author or persons that we're going to be identified? I don't want to take all the credit. Absolutely. Thank you. So deciding what to delegate. Here we go. Number one is you must do it. Okay. So that came up as one of the comments earlier on from Chris as well, which basically said, if it's coming in too late, I got to do it. The other one is, this is my favorite, is I could do it, but somebody else could help me. So even if I'm rushed and this is really, really late, if I could have someone even maybe shadow me to be able to do this, or I'm keeping a record of some of the steps that I did, so that as I'm doing it, I've got the steps that I did to get that, so that when this opportunity comes up again, I've recorded the steps or the process to be able to share that. I could do it, but others could do it if given an opportunity. And that's what I call the breathing moment. That's the hang on, catch my breath, hang on. I could do this, but this could be a great opportunity to help them grow. Now, others should be doing it, and I can help out in an emergency. And this comes to our open door idea, which is, we were working with an organization and they were like, well, one of the challenges with delegating is we've got an open door policy, which is, come see me whenever. Great. Well, when delegating, here's the thing is we want to be really clear about the expectations when we're doing this. So if our door is always open, two things can happen. One is we could be barraged with questions because they're afraid of making mistakes. So, do I do this? Do I do that? What happens next? The other part of that could also be they don't want to bother you. Even though you said my door is always open, you seem busy. So that it's just like you don't want to seem bossy, they don't want to be seeming needy. So they don't bother you. And then, as you know, the project gets into trouble because they didn't feel confident or comfortable to ask that clarifying question. So one of the things that we always suggest with this is absolutely be clear about an emergency, but as far as the open door goes, is set some milestones or set some moments where we are going to connect. So for example, if I give this project to you on Monday and say, well, then on Thursday, I put in your calendar 15 minutes, and that'll be a place to ask questions for me to also check in with you. Or whatever time or date that you want. But a few things happen when that happens. One is they know they have to start the project because on Thursday there'll be a check-in, and so what questions should they have or could they have? But this also allows them the freedom to build up their questions, and if there's an emergency question, they know they can now ask because it is high level. But if there's some just questions that they need, they know they could save that up for Thursday. So that really helps to keep the communication going, and it just helps create confidence and trust. And again, it takes away it from being haphazard. And then finally, others must do it. And we're going to look at skill level and the task as a way to deciding when that other person should do it. So let's look at the guidelines now for success. When should you delegate some of your work? So this is where we have that pen and paper. So I'm going to show you two different things here to do. So the first part is on the left side of the paper, you would draw up a list of current job responsibilities. So this, and draw it on the left side of the paper. Then make it in the middle line, you're going to, the team members qualified that could be taking over those responsibilities. And if there's no one to take over the responsibility, then leave a blank space. And the reason for this is a couple of things. One is it may be all in your head what those responsibilities are. So writing it down really gives clarity to what could be coming your way. Two, it starts to get you thinking about the people on your team, and maybe if there's no one able to take over that task or responsibility, that's an opportunity for maybe there's some training that needs to be involved. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to have a coaching session with them. But also, it's also an opportunity to maybe think of someone you hadn't thought of to take over that responsibility. And then another way is this visual right here is just simply thinking about the tasks and can this be delegated, yes or no, and to whom should it be delegated? So who is capable basically of completing that assignment? Have they done it before? What is their record on that, on similar work as a way to be able to look at that. And are the employee skills appropriate for that task? All right, let's go to a scenario here. So a new urgent project has come up. And this is maybe to Chris's comment earlier, which is this can't be late. It needs to be handled right now. New urgent project has come up. Let's call it Project XYZ. In the meantime, though, you've been working on Project Dashboard, which is in motion, as they say, and this requires the next 3 weeks. All right. So now is the time to delegate some of your workload to one of your team members. So in other words, you've been pulled with this new urgent project, Project XYZ, but you've been working on Project Dashboard. It's in motion, and this requires the next 3 weeks. Your urgent project maybe is going to be for maybe the next 2 weeks. So you have a bit of flexibility, but you are going to definitely be pulled by this other project. So how do we clearly communicate as you now set it up to be delegating to one of your team members for Project Dashboard? So as we said, and I'm going to break this down a little bit more, the important thing here, step one, is to be clearly communicate and provide context on what they're being asked to do. Step two is to clearly communicate performance standards, and we'll unpack that a little bit more because we don't always know what good looks like. How do I know? And then three is what kind of support and authority are they going to have? So what kind of support are you giving? How are you going to be available? You're going to be busy with Project XYZ, whether they're on Project Dashboard. So how much support can you give? And is there anyone else also that can support them as well? And then finally, that clear to communicate commitment and recognition. So recognition is such an important part of the delegation, that you appreciate that they're doing this, that this is not a trivial task, that you're giving them a part or something you were responsible doing for, and you entrust them to be able to do that. Wow, huge validator. So let's go a little bit more into detail in the steps. So as you said, it's clearly communicating step one, the context and what they're being asked to do. So some questions that we can really think about which is what specifically needs to be done? When should this be completed? And what are the consequences if it's not completed on time for the organization? So these are the things that we need to be very aware of, and we need to be able to communicate this clearly. And the other parts of this is what level of accuracy is going to be needed. How does this fit into the overall scheme? And thinking about the overall scheme, I want to say, how does this fit into the purpose? What is the big picture for this project? How does this fit into our organization? What is this going to do for your team, for your department, for you, for the organization? And how many parts are there to the entire project? So can you share with them the entire picture and what their part of it is? And who is working on that? So who can they communicate with? Step two is that clearly communicate the performance standards and how they'll be evaluated. So these are the basics of, 3 basic levels, exceed, meet, and minimal. That being said, how do you measure exceed? How would you describe it? How would you show it? Can you give an example of that? So it's very important to be very clear on what you are, when you say exceed expectations, what that means for you, and then meets expectations, what that means for you, and minimal expectations, again, what that means for you. And then in step 3, which is where we want to now be able to the level of support and the authority. So again, what resources are available? What resources are available and who can help them with the task? I'm having some trouble with the slide here. What assistance and availability can you provide? And again, this goes back to those milestones. Where are we going to meet? A Thursday, 9 a.m., 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. How often is that going to happen? And do they have the key? Do they have the password to be able to do that? And letting others know, as we talked about, who else is involved with this, letting others know that you've now handed the responsibility, so that you don't want to be on that CC email all the time, of getting all the information. You're now entrusting that person with the responsibility, but of course you're setting some milestones, and we're going to talk about monitoring delegation in just a little bit. And then our final step in all this is that commitment and recognition, and to clearly communicate it. So one of the biggest challenges is we're so good to give checklists, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. And then we might say, oh, good job, or thank you, or high five. It's really important for people to know what it is that they're doing well, and to be able to clearly communicate what it is that they're doing well. And that can help you also define about your own meet expectations and exceed expectations. When you're able to really define what for you, what would be that. And if you're able to communicate, hey, I was really impressed when you did this, and you took it upon yourself to do this, and you looked into that, and you researched this, or you communicated with the client ahead of time, and you're really proactive. When you're able to really clearly communicate that, that goes, again, a long way to people feeling validated, because that's probably the number one emotion that we all want to feel, is we want to feel heard, seen, and validated. And when that happens, you've got someone who is willing to go that extra mile for you. If the recognition is not forthcoming, then they will decide that, well, good performance doesn't really make any difference. Yeah, I got the thank you, or, way to go. But nowadays, we expect a little bit more than, the thank yous or the way to goes. We need a little bit more showing that we've been recognized. And if this doesn't happen, there's a bit of a ripple effect, which is, yeah, I did the responsibility for, that was given by my manager, and it was okay. I got the thank you, and they tell their team, and like, oh, okay. So people are not going to be as motivated when they're giving a task to be delegated, because again, we are a bit self-centered, and people want to feel validated and recognized. So that being said, let's get into the importance of feedback. Because what's going to happen is we have to give feedback, as I just said. We're talking about the positive feedback, as I just shared. And also, if you want to explore more about feedback, again, in our podcast, we've got some episodes on feedback. We've also got our course, Great Leadership Conversation Means Giving Feedback. So you could check that out. And we did a webinar on feedback. So we've got a lot of material on feedback if you're curious to learn more about how to deliver it, how to practice it, how to feel comfortable with it, because it feels like a difficult conversation for most of us in how to give feedback. But it is a critical element of this performance management process, because if there's no feedback given, positive or formative or constructive, whatever you want to call it, it's very hard to look at this as a growing opportunity. And that's the idea of feedback, is that it is about helping someone grow. That's the whole idea of feedback. So again, people want to know how they are doing, and that's important. Even those milestones, not waiting for the end of the project to say, hey, way to go when you did this. But as those milestones are going, I'm liking what I'm seeing here. And then how to give feedback. Now we're going to talk about how to give formative feedback, how to go, and it's like, I'm not sure this is where I'm going in the right path. But it all starts with this idea of your intention. How do you want that other person to feel, bigger or smaller? And the smaller sometimes might be the frustration that you expected the PowerPoint to be ready for that 9 a.m. meeting that you had set up with that person, and it wasn't quite ready, or wasn't what you had thought, and your frustration comes out, and it affects maybe your intention, how you speak, how you communicated, that even though you're smiling, going, hey, I'm just wondering why the PowerPoint wasn't quite ready when it needed to be ready, and you're smiling, but it's obvious that your intention is right now it's coming across as condescending, or you're just trying to make them feel smaller, as opposed to, and I know you're thinking, well, how do I make them feel bigger when they didn't do the project? Because that's what the opportunity here is. The opportunity is, what do I want the feedback to actually do? I want it to create collaboration, trust, or growth. So if that PowerPoint's not ready in time, then this is an opportunity to look at, I'm looking at the PowerPoint. We had set this deadline. So I want to see this as an opportunity, because we're going to work we're going to be working collaboratively on this project, how we can make sure that deadlines are going to be there. And so if you could share with me what challenges got in the way for you, and I could share my perspective as well. So it's around the idea of collaboration, trust, growth. And some ways that you can do that is to be focused on the performance issue, not the person. So to be focused on that the PowerPoint was due late, not that the person was maybe distracted or the person doesn't manage their time well or whatever that might be. And to focus on the future, not the past. This is the third time you've done this. It's like moving forward. How can we make sure that deadlines are going to feel respected and that we can move forward in that way? So focusing on the future and not the past. Finding a mutual purpose. What is maybe a style of working together, or that you both want, maybe you both want to actually exceed expectations for this project. So what is a mutual purpose that you both can share? And one of the things is soft on the person, hard on the problem. This is from like a book of negotiation skills, getting to yes, which is separate the person from the problem. And I say soft on the person, hard on the problem, which is there's no point in making the other person the problem, because they're not going to grow and you're not going to get what you want, which is to get them to be able to make the changes in their behaviors. So if we could both be looking at the problem together.
Joel, we lost your sound.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I hit the mute on my thing. So so the next thing I want to talk to you about is giving feedback in the workplace, is our validating our motivators. So there's a lot of things that motivates us, obviously, and we're going to look at just three main ones. So number one is that sense of achievement. So as you're giving the feedback and finding maybe that mutual purpose or what's going to motivate them in giving your feedback, what could be a base for that? Thinking about this person, is achievement important to them? Do they have a strong need to set and accomplish goals? Again, this is why we talked about when you're delegating that you put the purpose, how this fits in to how this task fits in or responsibility fits into the big part of the project. And these people often like challenges and they do prefer to work alone. And so for a lot of leaders, this is probably like, oh, this is me. You might be recognizing yourself in this. Oh, I'm an achievement type of person. I have that strong need to set and accomplish goals. Meaning and purpose are important, like challenges. I prefer to work alone. As you're looking at this is also good to realize that maybe not everyone is like you. And so that helps you also in setting the expectations and then also in how you communicate. Because that other person might be what motivates them maybe is the affiliation. And for them, it's about collaboration over competition. So they prefer to be working as part of a team. They don't want to have that high risk, that uncertainty. They don't want to be leading the project. They want to be a team player. And, you know, and I've definitely seen a lot of people that colleagues or also leaders and managers that don't want to be in the spotlight, but really want to be part of that team, want to don't even like to really be alone, that if there's something that's happening, they're like, okay, well, let's meet and let's figure this out. So affiliation is really important. They don't want to be in the spotlight. And the final one is the spotlight person. And this is the person who seeks the power. And so they feel more comfortable when in control and are influencing. And I want to add the word here. It's not that we're giving them the power, but they feel more comfortable when they're in control or at least influencing. And for them, they like the idea of competition. What's at stake for them? You know, they like that deadline. And if they get this deadline, if they hit that exceed expectations, and you know you could do it, so they enjoy that status and that recognition, and they need responsibility. So those are three very basic motivators as you think about when you're delegating to what might motivate this person when giving the task. One more time, let's do a summary of our clearly communicating in the 4 steps. Again, that's step 1. And if we don't get this right at the very beginning, we're always backtracking, which is to clearly communicate and provide context on what they're being asked to do. And then that performance standards, what does exceed expectations, meet expectations? how would you define that to your team member? What would that look and sound like? And that the level of support and the authority. And finally, as we said, that commitment and recognition. So let's go to the monitoring the delegation now. So we've clearly communicated the steps. We're along the way, we're giving feedback, we're auto-correcting as we go along the way with some milestones or some feedback. We've set deadlines, but now let's formalize this about how to monitor this. So there's different ways that we can monitor the delegation. But let's give you a little scenario first. So Raul delegated an assignment to Olya and later found out that Olya hesitated to ask for help when she was having difficulties. The performance standards were set for the task, but the system for monitoring was not. So once again, Olya was given this task. She didn't ask for the help when she was having difficulties. The performance standards were clear, but Olya was obviously left to her own devices. So she couldn't finish the assignment on time because she was having trouble getting the necessary information from other departments and didn't want to obviously ask Raul. So she didn't want to mention the problem to Raul because she thought, oh, if I say this, Raul's going to judge me and think that I'm incapable. And then of course, Raul finds out later and go, well, why didn't you let me know sooner? So something was missing along the way. What could Raul, and I'll ask you to put in the chat here, what could Raul have done better so that we don't get into this situation? Thinking about monitoring the delegation from a monitoring delegation perspective, because obviously the project started, Olya was left to her own, and then we get to the end, Olya didn't feel comfortable asking questions because she felt she was going to be judged. So Chris says, follow up on progress. Yeah, that's a great one. Patrick, setting up a check-in in advance of the state of the project. Yeah. Oh, I like this, Jason. Asking her if she understands after explaining and do a check-in. Yeah, and I'm going to add Jason to that, not just to ask if she understands, but to then ask that second question, which is, so tell me what you've understood by this. Maybe not say it in that same tone that I just did, but it's not just asking if they understand, because people will go, for sure. They don't want to seem like they're incapable. So really checking, going, what could be a no for you in this? What feels like a yes? What feels comfortable? What do you think might be a challenge for you in this? What questions do you think might come up? And Caroline, yeah, Raul didn't ask for any progress status. Joseph setting some milestones. Yeah, absolutely. Really, really good examples. Thank you. And so absolutely, one is that we want to do an assignment log, which is, as a lot of you described, which is to set those milestones, Joseph, as you just said that. Set those milestones in the project and then develop a system to be able to track that, which tasks are assigned to whom and when should they be completed. But definitely those milestones are really important, or check-ins if you want. And that check-in could be that informal methods of follow-up. Hey, just to let you know, I don't have a formal way of doing this, but I will be informally following up. And the most important thing is that it has to be sincere to be effective. It can't just be like, all right, I will be, informally, checking in with you. But you never do. So then it doesn't feel correct. It wasn't sincere. It wasn't effective. Another way could be progress reports, but the difference with progress reports is you're asking the employee, the person you've delegated to include the steps taken and any difficulties in execution. And then you can also ask for some sampling techniques. So depending on the type of work, you may ask for a sample of the work to be able to monitor the quality. So these are some different ways, and maybe it's a little bit of all of this in the way that you could monitor the delegation. And then our final one in this is, this is not ours. This is from, again, one of our clients who's work as consultants, and they just put it into a very simple 2x2. So you could put this on a Post-it note and just, we had that sheet before where you thought about, the task or the responsibilities, who's capable of doing it, what is the record on doing it before. And you could also even just do this as a 2x2. So at the top, you got the task, the importance, the urgency, And then on the left side, you've got the skill or the will. So if the task of important is low, but the skill will is very high, easy. That's, there you go, off you go, delegated. If it's a high urgent, high skill, delegate and put one of those monitoring things, whether it be the milestones, the check-in, the informal, the task report. If the task is low and the skill is low, delegate and monitor, or even delegate and think of this as a coaching or learning opportunity. And then high task, low skill, do yourself, don't delegate. I'll add to that, do yourself, don't delegate. Actually, do yourself, have someone shadow you, and you yourself, if you can, keep a record of the steps that you took, so that task record, so that you're able to then share that as well. So there we go. We shared with you some of the ideas here in how to delegate, what makes an effective delegator, what are the steps that are needed, and how to monitor that. It still boils down to these two questions when you decide it's time to delegate. Is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of my talent? Thinking back as you are deciding whether or not to delegate. And again, thinking what's in it for the team if I'm able to do this. Because at the heart of delegation is I'm growing my team by giving them responsibilities, and they're feeling validated, that they're working also with a sense of purpose. Again, what is some of our human traits that we go that? So I'm going to take some questions. As you're thinking of some questions, and you can start putting them in the chat. I just want to let you know about some of the upcoming webinars that we have coming. As we said, we have our free resources on our website. These are some of the free webinars coming up. Essential soft skills that you need to master. How to be a leader, not a boss, which is, really ties in nicely with what we were just speaking about in the delegation. April 20th, we're doing a combo, be a great presenter with Microsoft PowerPoint and presentation skills. So how do you have that great looking PowerPoint and present it effectively? And then May, the 10 cool features that you should be using in Microsoft. So let's go over to just show you a little bit. We're very excited about our new website. And so I'm just going to share with you what is going on at our new website. We're very excited about it because it's much easier to navigate and a lot more information here. So if you go to greatcanadiantraining.ca, you can see here we've got our courses, our software, our professional skills, about us, and the free resources. If we go to the courses and we just look at what we just did, you can see it's broken down here by all the software and the professional skills, and even the training packages. So our leadership package, or facilitation and presentation. And if we go into leadership courses, we see here we got our leadership foundation courses, like Be a Leader, Not a Boss, which we're doing our webinar coming up. But also the one we just did, which is delegation. We have a public class that's coming up on April 19th, also July 11th, but you can also reach out to us for private classes as well. We talked about the feedback. Great leadership conversation means feedback. There you go, right there. We got a public class coming up on March 6th if you want to sign up for that. And that's right here in the skills. And if we go over to free resources, this is your one stop for all your free resources. As I said, this webinar is going to be available on YouTube. So if you want to come back and see this webinar again, you would go back and check out the previous webinar. And also we'll plug our podcast, because honestly, the podcast we've had so many great guests. There's been a lot of learning about leadership and communication skills, and also some of our own expertise that we're also sharing in a lot of the podcasts around being better communicators, better leaders. And then finally, also, we've got our free downloads that you could check out in software or professional skills. So let's go over to our questions that we go over here. So question came in: are there some ways to prepare to delegate? Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when I was suggesting, when you want to keep a record of some of the things that you're doing, so that that'll just save you time at the beginning. If there's maybe some things that you're doing on your own, and if you can keep a record of what it is that you're doing, the steps that are along the way, that will save you the time of afterwards of having to try to articulate it or communicate it. So being prepared with some examples of what you've done, also some examples of trying to find what good looks like to be able to share that. And then again, those two questions: is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of my talent? As a way to prepare that. What makes an effective delegator? Another question. Sandra, thank you for the comment. Very important. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So another one, what makes an effective delegator? It's number one is you have to put your ego aside. You have to check your ego at the door and go, this is not about me. This is about, it's going to help me. Obviously, it's going to free up some of my time in the long run. But in the short term, I'm growing my team and my people, and I'm creating a lot of more trust, and people are feeling validated. I think is number one. It's letting go, having the confidence to do that, and being prepared that people will make mistakes. They are human beings. Carolina, how to approach someone to delegate me tasks? Not sure what that means, a me task. If you can clarify that. You could take yourself off mute, or you could type that up if you want. Oh, you want to be oh, okay. Thank you. Carolina wants to be delegated too. Absolutely. Instead of the one delegating, for sure. Well, I mean, the obvious seems to be to have that conversation, to sort of manage it up. Ask if I could do a task without stepping in. Yeah, absolutely. It's in fact, we have a podcast coming up about that a little later on in the season, which is about, one of our guests was talking about how to showcase your value. And so this is really good to be able to look at some of the things that you've done and either say, again, looking at this as mutual purpose. I want to look at this as a growth opportunity, manager or leader. And I see here an opportunity. I would love I'd appreciate the chance to try this. I think this will help me grow, and I think this could really be beneficial to the team. So letting them know what the benefit is to them, but also what the benefit is to you. Obviously, it's going to help you grow, but it's also going to help the department. What are the okay? And then Carolyn, what if the person you approach to delegate a task isn't interested, not in my job description, despite your efforts to explain why you are delegating and how this fits in with their growth contribution to the organization? Well, number one is, if you're in a unionized environment, that's always a challenge if it's not in their description. That's where we get into a coaching situation, which is asking a little bit more about, what do they see, what do they see as the challenge to doing this, in the sense that I understand it's not in your job description. See this as the growth opportunity, and I really see this as an opportunity for you to continue to grow your skills and your expertise. And the reason why I chose you was because I thought this could really bring some more abilities that you have, and I look forward to collaborating with you on this and to find out what's blocking them, because they could be using this as an excuse to not want to do it, because they might feel like they're not confident to do it, or they're not capable to do it. And then finally, if they just do not want to do it, then they don't, there's nothing you could do, because, and maybe it's looking at, maybe it's also the wrong thing to be delegating to them. Maybe they're not seeing this as the right task to be delegated to. It's not the right challenge. They don't see it as a growth opportunity. They see it more as a trivial task or more work to do. What if the employee body language and attitude is not encouraging when delegating tasks? Can you force? Well, again, this is we ideally don't want to force, but that's a great Olianka, that's a great observation. If you already see the clues and cues, which is that they've gone to we say fight or flight, and it looks like they're going to flight, which is they're tensing up and they're getting very quiet about doing this. That means that this is something stressful. And so again, we want to get their thoughts. I'm sharing this task with you because I think you're very capable to do this. I really appreciate and what you're going to bring to this. I'm sensing that there's some hesitation about taking this on, and I don't want to be assumptive, but I'm sensing this. Am I on the right path? Is this correct? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Thank you, Caroline. I'm glad that was good. Or assign it to someone else. Well, before we assign it to someone else, we always want to find out what's behind it. And that's where the coaching comes in, or even the feedback comes in, that we want to be able to do that. And then Chris, is there a quiz to evaluate if I'm a good manager? Find your weaknesses. Oh, good question. Well, not to sell our course, but we do have a course called, Be a Leader, Not a Boss. Because that's what you're saying, Chris, is so many managers find themselves in that loneliest spot, which is they're in the middle and they're kind of alone. And so no one's really giving them feedback as a manager. How am I doing? I don't know if there's actually a quiz, but obviously there's something called the 360 evaluation, where it's an anonymous survey that goes out to people on your team. And you could look into those 360 surveys where people anonymously fill this out and give feedback on your managerial style. But, before doing that, maybe, not that we don't plug our courses, obviously, but, we're more than happy to practice with you. We also have coaching as well. So if you want to talk to us, email us at info@greatcanadiantraining.ca. And we could also talk to you about some one-on-one coaching. Carolyn, similar to the tools quiz to help assess what motivates us in the workplace. There's so much out there. You can easily find that. One of my favorites is called Dan Pink, who's an author who talks a lot about what motivates us. And so you could look him up and check out his resources as well as to what motivates us in the workplace. And again, this is something we could definitely, as you look back on some of the webinars that we've had as well. We're giving them new ideas for future courses and webinar. Yeah, absolutely. But the motivation is, it's part of our emotional intelligence course. And so if you also, it's another place that you could also see what motivates us, which is our self-awareness, but our self-management and our social awareness and our relation management as to, what is important to each person. And it comes down to our communication to really understand what is important to that person and what motivates them. We have to really be present and check our assumptions at the door. So as a lot of you said, it seems like their body language is not moving forward, or they're saying no. There's always something behind that. And we want to be genuinely curious and not assumptive when we do that. So I want to be respectful of our time. I see we have about a minute left. These are some great questions. Thank you, everyone, for these questions. And I'll just check in if there are any other final questions before we sign off. And then, of course, you will see the link for this available on YouTube and a handout as well. Thank you all for your participation today on delegation. And I'll leave you again. Is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of my talent? And as you are delegating, to look at this webinar again and look about, if you're clearly communicating it, and to be genuinely curious when you are seeing if there's any resistance to that. Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate that. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Carolyn. Glad to hear it was motivating. Thank you, Carolyn. Good to hear it was great information. Chris, you're number one rule to participate in the icebreaker. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Chris. Lisa, thank you. Thanks, Colby. Olyanka, thank you so much. Rhonda, I'm glad this was a useful session. Thank you, Regin. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mark as well. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut us down.
All right. Thank you, Sindhu. Thank you. Glad it was a great session.
All right.